Ah, yeah, just about as groovy as a 10-cent movie. I'm your man, Calvin Gibbs. Welcome to Drama Talk Radio. As you know, Drama Talk Radio is the show where the word drama, DRAMA, stands for developing real and moving art. Thank you for listening to this episode of the podcast. We're going to get right to it because today I have a very special guest. This is someone that I've known for quite a few years now. I consider her my little sister. Please welcome Pat Sykes to Drama Talk Radio. Welcome, Pat.
Hello there, everyone. Hey, Calvin. Okay, it says the volume. Hey, Calvin, can you hear me? How are you?
I am doing well. How are you, Pat?
I'm doing great,
Fantastic. Well, because I know a lot about you, we've gone through many situations in theater, and we've had successes and failures, and mostly good experiences.
Mm-hmm.
For today, let's talk about people that are on their artistic journey, and they may have fears, they may have apprehensions about this journey. So let's talk about it. What are some of the fears maybe that you've come up with in your personal journey?
Wow, let me count the ways. There are many fears out there, and there are many that I've had, and I'm grateful now in that I can like put it all into one basket, so to say, and just call them fears. And they range from, well, fear of the unknown, you know, not knowing what I'm going to encounter, not knowing what their perceptions of me may be, fear of not looking like what society has told us is acceptable, not having the right shape, not being the right size, not having the right intellectual level to do the work. Believe it or not, as an actor, I know for me, it's not just doing the work. I believe you have to have a certain level of mental capacity, so to say, dare I say intellect, to be able to interpret the work and do it. I know this is a day and age where you just kind of do whatever you want, like a TikTok world, dare I say. But I believe there's a certain level of, like I said, intellect that makes your work work. So that's another fear of mine. So I'm just going to leave it. Those are my fears. Were fears that are leaving. Yeah.
One of the things that that was a fear of mine was not being good enough. Not being good enough. Seeing people who I considered to be fantastic at their craft, and here I was, trying to fit in, trying to do what they do, and not feeling that I had the skills or was as knowledgeable to make that happen. And people say that the fear of speaking in public and death are the two worst fears that people go through. And although you can only die once in real life, I'd be damned if you can't die more than once when you're in front of people. And
oh my gosh, yes.
And yeah, you haven't lived until you've died in front of an audience. Yeah.
Yes.
That kind of put things into perspective. And but how do you get past that? How do you prepare for that?
Yeah. Wow. How do you prepare to possibly die 1,000 deaths on stage? Wow. Um, okay, I would say back when I was more consistent on stage, I would try all these tricks like um imagine that there's nobody in the audience. Pray before you go on stage. Read your lines over and over and over again before you go on stage, which, by the way, just heightened my anxiety because while I'm reading it over and over again, then I get on stage and I'm wondering if I'm saying what I just read a few minutes ago. So that did not work. Uh, gosh, man. So those things kind of didn't work, and there was one that I developed that started to work for me, and it still does. I went to Second City to study improvisational theater for a bit, and after having done it for a while, there was one scene in particular. I was on stage, and the setup was it was a girls' night in my apartment. And, I'm like, wow, this is my apartment. And so I started to treat it like it was my apartment. When you're doing improv, you don't have anything, and they tell you to basically make up as you go. That's why you study the physical theater, body movement, and stuff like that. And you really get into pantomiming and making things up. So I'm like, hey, this is my house? Fine. I went and made me a stove. I made me some tea. I made me a cabinet and getting cups out of the cabinet. I was cleaning off the table, arranging the front. I was doing some of everything because, again, it was my house. So my note, and it's amazing because this happened, I would say, about over 20 years ago. My note from this specific instructor was like, Pat, I really liked the way you looked on stage. You looked so comfortable. You owned the space. Now, mind you, I didn't have a lot of words to say because I was too busy cleaning my house.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, wow. Now when I get into situations, one of the things I think about is that moment, and I tell myself, this is my space. Where I am belongs to me. It's parallel to the scripture. I don't remember where it is, but it mentions about wherever your feet are, that space belongs to you.
That's right.
And that it helps me to this day. And I've also started going to therapy. So therapy and that feeling of wherever my big size 11 feet are, that space, it belongs to me.
Okay.
That's what helped me.
Okay. Very good. Very good.
Mm-hmm.
I have learned that to help myself with fear on stage is that I want to be that go-to person. I put that upon myself when something goes wrong in the scene. Now, just like you created this world in the scene for yourself, it's your place, your space, your apartment, your house, whatever. I want to understand the scene that I'm in so well, so that if any of my castmates forget a line, drop a line, mess up a line, I am going to be that go-to person, which means I must totally understand what's going on to the point that if things go wrong, I can jump in and say something, do something to bring it back and get everybody back on track. And that's something that I put upon myself. That means I must know my lines as well. I must have a thorough understanding of my character in the play as well to be able to jump in and help where needed.
Right.
And by doing that, it takes away some of the fear of having to deal with the audience because I'm working inside of the experience of the scene. And I don't have time to worry about how I look, Am I sweating? And I probably am, but that's what has helped me. One thing that you said earlier was fear of, how you look. People have fear about how they sound, maybe, or whatever. Do you think that, well, I'm sure people still go through that. How do I look? How do I sound? But in your preparation for the play, the casting director or the director gave you the part for a reason, despite how you may look or whatever. Is it possible to put that aside? No matter what the character looks like, you are the character, and just say, bump it. I'm too big, I'm too little, I'm green, black, white, brown, whatever. I am this character. Is it possible to get past that fear?
It is. It is possible to get past that fear. However, in my case, what I've discovered is there was so much self-doubt that my mind wasn't even in a place where I could be logical, because what you said is very logical and it makes sense. They hired you because you look like the character. They didn't ask you to lose weight. They didn't ask you to do, talk a certain way. So you are what they were looking for. Yet when you are like I was, not very confident of myself and very critical of myself, you don't think about those things.
Yeah, yeah. Another thing that you mentioned was the preparation. Reading, rereading the script. I mentioned understanding the scene that you're in, understanding the character. I found that the better prepared that you are, the more you can put those butterflies into a certain place. I'm not saying don't have butterflies, because that's going to happen, until you get to a point where, you don't have the butterflies, and then you need to ask yourself some other questions.
Exactly.
We'll talk about that too, but that helps with the anxiety, knowing that you are prepared. I think a lot of times people step out and may not be as prepared as they could be or as they want to be. And then it's like, oh, damn, maybe I should have spent that, yesterday looking over my script instead of partying. And here I am, and the show's getting ready to open,
Yeah.
So I want to talk also about, and as an actor, it's all about the connection between actor and audience. Whether it's a scene that you're in or a monologue that you may be on stage by yourself presenting. It's all about that connection between the audience and the speaker. I learned this as well as a public speaker, as a motivational speaker in Toastmasters. It's all about that connection. And I think a lot of actors don't realize it's about giving. It's about giving. You give the audience what they want, what they need, what you're supposed to, and let it fall right there. Your thoughts on that, Pat?
Wow, that's a awkward dynamic, because in my head right now is, yes, that I believe that's something that we were taught, and that's something that, gosh, I'm just going to say it. You can, I hope I can clear it up later, but a higher level caliber of performer takes into consideration, because nowadays, I'm not knocking TikTok. TikTok is cool, It's cool. However, because it's such a quick right now format, And I think a lot of people have gotten into this mindset of me, do what feels good for me. And I'm not going to say that they're not thinking about the audience. I just don't think they're really considering exactly what the audience is looking for. You know?
Okay. I can buy that. But I think we're in agreement that they should be thinking about the audience because that's who you are in front of performing for.
And I agree with you. They should.
Now, I'm not saying knock down the wall and talk directly to them unless the script calls for that.
Right.
But for me, one of the things I look for is during the curtain call, if I have done what I've supposed to do, the audience will let me know. You know, some actors, they can have a small part, but it's a memorable part. And they crushed it. And the audience will let them know. As opposed to somebody who was the main character on stage for, let's say, 80% of the time and may not have made that connection. So for me, it's all about the connection between the audience and myself, or my character, I should say.
Yeah.
So let's talk about let's get back to to fear.
No, I'm sorry. I'm just thinking. In another issue of mine is overthinking. Just
Okay.
the way the dynamic has changed as of late. You know, you have being on stage, literally being on stage in front of people, wherein now you don't see that as often because of COVID, and it's people in front of a camera. So yeah, it's a lot of variables in that as well.
Yeah, it is. And in previous episodes of Drama Talk, we've discussed that maybe a new training will spring out of this, acting on video, how to reach or connect with your audience in a virtual world.
Yeah.
Because I have seen quite a few performances in the last few months that were not, that I didn't feel the connection.
Yeah.
And it could be because the actors were talking to a camera or looking at themselves on screen. You know, that's a different dynamic as well when you can actually see yourself or you're talking to a camera versus seeing that audience. You know, it's a different dynamic. So maybe a new training system will spring up out of all of this.
Hopefully.
All right, Pastor, when you make $1 million off it, break a brother piece off.
I will. Look, as I train someone else, it's sparking inside of them. We can work on it together.
Okay, there you go. That's a plan.
Yep.
That's a plan. So, when we talk about fear, we're talking about fear when you get the shakes, when you get the butterflies in your stomach, when your hands get wet, sweaty, and clammy, when you're sweating like a pig, and you're still backstage. You haven't even hit the lights yet. Okay, it's usually cool backstage. Okay, and your makeup is already dripping.
I'm thinking you haven't left home for rehearsal yet. Oh my gosh.
Oh my God. That's fear. That's fear. When you get out there and you forget your lines because you can't think anymore, that's fear. When you want the stage to open up and let you fall through so you can get out of there, oh yeah, that's fear. And I know Pat is laughing because we all have experienced that. Pat, come on now.
There was a show that I did some years ago at Chicago Park District the Black Hawk Theater area, and I forgot the name of the show, but nonetheless, in this show, you talk about working your acting chops. Boy, oh boy. There were 3 main characters. The show had to be about a good 2 hours long. 3 characters, 3 actors, and those 3 actors played, I would say, 10, if not 20 characters each.
Wow.
So I'm already pre-theater all over the place. Now I have to play all these people. So this was performed at Theater on the Lake. And I don't know whether it's the same format, but back when I did it, it was a square theater, and people were all around the middle of the theater, and they had 4 rows that people could come up and down, as well as the actors' entrances and exits. So I was already off stage, and it was time for me to enter. And, because we play so many different characters, we had a very simple, what do you call that? Attire, uniform, whatever. I forgot what it's called. But anyway, so my task was to, and this happened every night, I'm on stage, then I run out diagonally this way. And then there was, the dressing room was underneath where the audiences sat, like benches. So I exit, and then I run through underneath where the audience sat, the dressing rooms. And as I'm running to get to the other end, you have people taking clothes off of me. I had on like a black unitard, and I took off what was on, and I'm running, by the way, and they're putting my uniform, my clothes back on me, my costume, that's what that thing is called, back on me. So this particular night, talk about your fears, my parents came to the show.
Uh-oh.
And I was like, I had all the characters in my head, and like, oh my gosh, my mother is out there, the most critical woman I know. So somewhere along the run, I missed somebody, and I was supposed to have on a skirt, but I just had on my leotard. I missed the total costume.
Oh, wow.
Because before I ran out, I saw my mother. And I get back on stage, and I think I skipped the whole scene. I laughed the whole scene, and when it was all over, they were like, Pat, what's going on? I was like, I'm sorry, it's all my mama, and she was with me. But
yeah.
Bring back memories, I'm telling you.
Yeah, and that's a dynamic too. When you see people that you know in the audience, can throw you off as well. Yeah. I tried not to look directly at anyone. I look at the audience in general. I look in areas rather than specific people. This way, by looking at an area, it may be 6, 7 people that think that I'm looking at them. But I'm not looking at anyone specifically. I'm only looking in that area and not focusing on any specific person. And that works for me rather than looking at specific people, because that will throw you off.
Oh yeah.
That will throw you off. Now, my brother being, the person that he is, if I was to be on stage and I looked specifically and saw him, and he felt I was looking at him, oh yeah, he would try to do something to throw me off my game. I'm not even going to get into what might happen, but I would definitely have to fight against that moment. So.
Oh yeah.
So I feel you. So Pat, when you ran out there with just your leotard on and not the dress, how did you? You were like booty out. How did you get past that?
I swear I don't even know. All I know is it happened, and I tried to laugh my way through it, which threw the other 2 actors I was with just totally off. Yeah, thank God I had a very kind and forgiving director, because he knew me, he knew my work, thank God this was the first show. This was after several shows, so he knew it had to be something that occurred, and he showed me some grace.
Okay.
Let's just put it like that.
Okay.
But yeah.
That's funny. I can imagine how the castmates were looking at you on stage.
Yeah.
Teammates were like,
And they were.
What the hell?
They were.
Now, see something like that, even trying to be the person to help the scene, I think that would have thrown me for a loop. Somebody come out, without not just the proper clothes, but basically clothes at all. Like, what?
Oh, my head on was a leotard. Like, oh my gosh.
Like, what? But see, you got past it and you went out again.
Exactly.
Some people would have got frozen by that fear of that happening to them again and might have just given up their career at that point.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And that's what this episode is about, the fear, things that can happen on your creative journey.
Yeah. Yeah.
And trust me, what actually doesn't kill you, you will learn from.
You will learn from if you decide to do that.
Mm-hmm.
You got those special people who are like, whatever, and don't think about it. And that's cool, to each his own. But for me, I've gotten to that point, like you mentioned, I would like to not just crumble in these moments like I used to. Now it's like, okay, like you said, you made it through that. As awkward as it was, you made it through. What worked? What didn't work? Mm-hmm. And develop a plan so that it doesn't happen again. And if it does, you can make it salvageable enough for those that you work with. Mm-hmm. I believe you alluded to being the type of person, the go-to person. You don't, just because you know that there's a go-to person, you don't want to just totally rely on, oh, well, there's a go-to person. No, I want to create an atmosphere wherein I don't have to always rely on the go-to person. And if something happens wherein the go-to person has to kick in, I don't want the go-to person to have to work too hard to cover my mistakes.
Oh, don't get it twisted, Pat. I don't want anybody to know I'm the go-to person.
Oh, okay.
Don't get it twisted.
My bad.
Don't get it twisted. That's for me. That's for me to help them. I don't want them to know I'm there. Don't lean on me. Get your stuff together. Don't lean on me, man.
Oh my God. I knew this was going to happen. I knew it. Okay. Whew. Okay.
You see, I'm giving and all, I'm helpful and all, but I don't want to be dependent on. I don't want them to know I'm the person. When
okay, your secret is safe with me.
When it's all over, they can say good save or whatever, and I'll be like, fine. Don't look for that to happen tomorrow night. Oh, Pat, man, we are talking about fears on your creative and some things that have happened. I want to draw back a memory for you.
Oh, dear God.
Remember doing the Amen Corner at the Austin Town Hall in Chicago, Park District, and we had this multi-level creation on the stage where the one part was the church, and then the other part was the living quarters.
Yes.
Well, we had this actress in the show who was a bit on the heavy side.
Uh-huh.
And we had to climb a ladder to get to the second level stage area on stage. And I remember looking down, and all I heard this loud thud. And I remember looking down, and all I saw was legs up in the air. And I'm like, oh my God. Remember that, Pat? And we had to try to stay in character. I don't even remember who helped her up because I couldn't even look anymore after I saw that. But somehow got it together and finished that show.
Oh my gosh.
I give her kudos, big time respect, for showing up for the next show.
Boy,
remember that one.
Oh my gosh.
A lot of
when
people,
you said the concoction, that's exactly what it was.
A lot of people would have got wiped out after that experience.
Yes.
You know, whether it's a smaller audience in a park district type deal, or whether it's a big theater, something like that happens, it can definitely wipe you out from a confidence level. And that's another part of overcoming the fear, is having confidence.
Having the confidence, as well as I'd like to a support system.
Mm-hmm.
Everywhere else, you have a support system, and in theater, it's great to have a support system. You are my support. Okay, that's a secret nobody's supposed to know. Then you interviewed her a while back, Dionne Hawkins. She's also my support because, wow, I remember getting yelled at her by her and having shoes thrown at me by her. And we joke about the shoes. It's all in love. However, what it all boiled down to is each of us, I believe, have a stronger sense of ourselves when it comes to performing on stage.
Mm-hmm.
The area wherein we did shows in Austin Town Hall, I'm sorry to say, it's not known for its theater.
Right.
It's performed in a cultural center, yet, in my opinion, it only supports like one section of the cultural, one or two parts of the cultural aspect, and that is dance and music.
Right.
But theater, that's like a dying art. So for her to be there to execute that in that area where theater is not the big thing to do, because we all know, if you live in Chicago, theater, that's the North Side has it down. I know some people who live on the South Side who were actors, and they're like, I had to move to the North Side to get work. So Austin Town Hall is west. It's a little closer, but it's not really known for that. And to have a support system there in that area where it's not a big thing, to support you and encourage you to still come out and still do it, that too has been very helpful for me, having that support system to overcome my fears.
Sure. It's like a training ground. And you mentioned Dionne Hawkins, who is the director of the theater program there for adults and for the youth. Has been for many years. She's done a fantastic job there. But for us, for me, it was like a training center where I could go and work on my craft, and I really listened to that direction that she was giving, and I tried to understand. Oh, that's another thing. Figuring out what type of director a person is makes it easier to take direction from them.
Yeah.
And maybe that's why Dionne never threw shoes at me. I don't know, Pat.
Probably.
but that definitely helps. And that's part of the fighting the fear also. Having the trust in your director. Listening to your director, doing a mind meld, if you will, but understanding what type of direction is being given to you and why. And then going out and executing it to the best of your ability. Definitely helps calm the fears.
I completely agree with you, because there are also times where the director sees you in a better light than you may see yourself.
Mm-hmm.
I spoke about that earlier, about where my head was. I'm like, I'm just doing this because I enjoy it and it's fun. And I hope somebody learns something along the way. But really, underneath it all, I'm not feeling good about myself. And this helps divert my mind from that. So when you have that director with whom you mind meld, and you kind of see what they want, and you want to give them what they're looking for, and in turn, like you mentioned earlier, they saw something in you that you may not see in yourself, thus putting the two together, that too helps diminish your fear so that you can get the job done.
That is correct. And
Yeah.
that's why they chose you to be in that project, is because they trust you enough to get the job done. And
Yeah.
on another episode, we're going to talk about directing, but that's a totally different animal within itself. I think there's a lot of psychological aspects to directing, and one of the big ones is getting to know your actors
Mm.
in the
Mm-hmm.
in the aspect of what they can do, what you can get out of them, and pushing them where you need them to go without breaking them.
True.
Because people will break. People have psyches, they have emotions, and you can't. I've seen actors get pushed to the point that they cry.
Yeah.
So you got to do what you need to do without breaking them. Because once you break them, then you got to put them back together and you got to build them back up again.
Yeah.
That takes
Yeah.
time,
You did.
and that takes time
Mm-hmm.
and effort. And Lord forbid they get scared, and then that fear factor creeps in. You got to deal with that as well.
Yeah.
So, Pat, I've enjoyed this conversation about fear on your creative journey. Thank you very. Do you have any artistic projects coming up, or anything that you can tell us?
Right now I'm working with a young man, a very brilliant young man. His name is Breshawn Wilkerson. He's a Chicago musician, rapper, influencer, and he and I just did a workshop together with youth, and we had like 5-year-olds rapping when he was done. So we're putting together another project for November. And I'm also working on a one-woman show. I'll be 50 this year in December. So I am working to change that format into something virtual. And I'm just here sharing knowledge with my younger peers as much as I can to help them be the best that they can be. And I'm glad and I'm thankful that you allowed me to be here to talk about fears. I know that's one thing that halted me. Everything that you mentioned has helped. And another thing that really helped me was therapy. Don't be afraid to venture down that road if need be.
Okay. Well, thank you again, Pat. I've enjoyed this episode of Drama Talk Radio. When you get closer to your projects going up, please come back and share with us again.
Most definitely.
Well, that's about all, y'all, for this episode of Drama Talk Radio. I want to thank my guest, Pat Sykes.
Thank you.
I'm your host, Calvin Gibbs, and it's always imparting that we take 2 steps to the rear and get on out of here. Until next time, exit stage left.